Robert sat quietly at the head of the polished mahogany dining table, the flickering candlelight reflecting off the crystal glasses and ornate silverware. The room buzzed with forced laughter and hollow congratulations, none of which touched him. Anna, radiant in a flowing silk dress, lifted her glass with practiced grace, her smile dazzling but empty. Around her, Robert's family beamed with pride, their eyes glittering with a mixture of excitement and calculated satisfaction. The occasion was Anna's acceptance into a prestigious art residency abroad, a dream she had chased relentlessly. Yet beneath the grandeur and celebration, a harsh truth gnawed at Robert's core: his childhood home had been sold behind his back, a casualty in their quest to fund her ambitions. The oak tree that stood guard outside that home had witnessed every milestone of his life, every scraped knee and whispered secret. Now it stood distant, belonging to strangers who had no memory of the laughter that once filled its rooms. The very foundation of his past, the place that shaped his identity, had been stripped from him by the people he once trusted most. His mother's perfume lingered in the air, sweet and suffocating, mingling with the scent of rich truffle oil drizzled over the extravagant meal. It was a sensory assault that made his stomach twist. His father's booming voice cut through the noise, delivering polite but cold demands masked his concern, his words sharp like a blade cloaked in silk. "Robert, darling," his father began, the term of endearment weaponized to soften the blow, "Anna's residency is an incredible opportunity. We just need a little help from you to make it happen." His fingers steepled confidently, a gesture Robert had come to recognize as a precursor to a demand. A small loan, nothing more, to cover some unforeseen expenses. Think of it as an investment in the family's future. Robert forced a slow nod, his lips pressed into a thin line. The relief on their faces was immediate, as if the act of borrowing from him erased the guilt of selling his home. His voice felt small and foreign when he finally spoke. "Of course. Anything for Anna." It was a lie, a carefully crafted mask worn to hide the storm raging beneath. As he excused himself from the suffocating room, the oppressive quiet gave way to the electric hum of the city night. Neon signs cast jagged reflections on the wet pavement, painting it in harsh strokes of pink and blue. Robert inhaled deeply, the cool air cleansing but not soothing. His phone buzzed, and he expected the familiar message about bank details, but instead, a notification from a trading app lit the screen. It was the biotech stock he had invested his meager savings in, one recommended by a fleeting vision that had grown stronger with time. The stock's value had soared beyond his wildest hopes, numbers glowing with the promise of a new beginning. The memories of his accident resurfaced unbidden, the sterile scent of antiseptic that clung to hospital sheets, the dizziness, the slow, painful journey back to life. Those moments of vulnerability had awakened something fierce inside him, a clarity that cut through the fog. His parents' faces hovered in his mind, masks of concern that barely concealed their greed. Their decision to sell the home, framed as a necessity, was a calculated betrayal disguised as sacrifice. Robert's childhood friend, Mark, had tried to soothe him, reminding him that a house was just a building, that new memories awaited. But Robert's visions told a different story. He saw Mark and Anna in a dimly lit bar, their laughter a dagger to his heart, their alliance a threat to everything he cherished. The pain threatened to overwhelm him, but he crushed it beneath a resolve as hard as stone. The time for silent suffering was over. He retreated to the sterile confines of his small apartment, its lone window framing a view of a brick wall, a stark contrast to the sprawling oak and blooming roses he had left behind. The hum of his laptop became a quiet declaration of war. Each click, each calculated investment, was a brick in the fortress he was building, a sanctuary to reclaim what was lost. Public records revealed the house had passed to an elderly couple, the Abernathys, who owned a struggling manufacturing plant. A vision showed Robert the company's impending bankruptcy, a looming opportunity. With steady hands and unwavering focus, he began acquiring commercial debt anonymously, becoming the largest creditor in the company where his father worked. The pieces were falling into place. 2 weeks later, headlines announced Northgate Holdings' financial collapse. Robert's father's voice trembled with panic as he confessed the devastating impact on his career and family life. Robert's feigned sympathy masked a smile that promised retribution. His offer to buy back his childhood home was accepted, sealing the fate of those who had betrayed him. As the shadows lengthened, Robert stood in the garden of his reclaimed home, planting rose bushes in the rich earth. The war was over, but his victory was not loud or boastful. It was a quiet, unbreakable boundary set with calm finality. He was no longer the broken boy stripped of his past, he was the master of his future, forged by fire and betrayal, finally free. Robert had grown up under the sprawling branches of the old oak tree that stood sentinel outside the family home. That tree had witnessed his first steps, his whispered secrets, and the dreams of a young boy destined for greatness. At 32, the hopeful innocence of those days was gone, replaced by the sharp edges of a man shaped by betrayal and loss. The wounds inflicted by Anna's choices ran deep, but they had also carved out a resilience he never knew he possessed. He was no longer the boy who trusted blindly. Years of hard work had transformed Robert into a shrewd businessman, someone who read people and situations with precision. His tailored suits and confident posture masked the quiet storm within, a mind constantly strategizing and calculating. His company, once a shared dream with Anna, was his battleground now. The betrayal had not only stolen a home but threatened to unravel everything he had built. Robert's eyes, dark and steady, held a fire that refused to be extinguished. Anna was everything Robert was not. At 29, she radiated ambition wrapped in charm, a woman willing to sacrifice anything for her art and fame, even if it meant dismantling the life Robert had worked to create. Her porcelain skin and piercing gaze masked a selfishness that had grown with each success. The residency abroad was more than a career milestone, it was a stepping stone away from Robert, and from the values he held dear. Anna's world was one of glamour and endless opportunity, but it was also a world built on fragile facades and whispered lies. She moved through rooms like a queen, commanding attention, yet leaving destruction in her wake. Melissa was Robert's anchor amidst the chaos. As the company's operations manager and his closest confidant, she bore the weight of his unspoken pain. At 31, Melissa balanced strength and vulnerability with grace. Her sharp intellect and steady hands had kept the company afloat through turbulent times, but watching Anna's deception unfold tested even her resolve. She had seen the subtle manipulations, the whispered conversations behind closed doors, and the gradual erosion of trust. Loyalty to Robert was unwavering, but the strain was visible in the tired lines that crept around her eyes. Melissa's quiet support was a lifeline, reminding Robert he was not alone in the fight. Daniel, 34, was the catalyst for much of Robert's pain. Smooth-talking and endlessly charming, he had entered Anna's life at a time when Robert's world was already shaky. Daniel's presence was magnetic, his smile disarming, but beneath it lay a calculating opportunist. He played the game of power with ruthless efficiency, fueling Anna's rise while systematically undermining Robert's influence. His ambition was insatiable, and he reveled in the chaos his machinations sowed. Daniel's alliance with Anna was one of convenience and shared desire for dominance, a partnership built on manipulation and mutual gain. The dynamics between the four were complex and fraught. Robert's steady determination clashed with Anna's restless ambition. Melissa's loyalty to Robert was tested by the ever-shifting tides of corporate intrigue and personal betrayal. Daniel's scheming was the invisible hand guiding the unraveling of a once promising partnership. Each played a role in a drama that blurred the lines between business and personal vendettas, where every smile hid a secret and every handshake could conceal a dagger. Robert's mornings began early, long before the city stirred awake. He found solace in routines, reviewing financial reports, planning strategic moves, and consulting quietly with Melissa. Their conversations, though professional, carried the weight of unspoken history and shared burdens. Melissa understood the stakes, she saw the exhaustion beneath Robert's composed exterior and offered support without judgment. Together, they plotted not just the survival of the company but its reclamation. Anna's days were a whirlwind of gallery openings, social media engagements, and networking events. Her image was carefully curated, a blend of vulnerability and strength that captivated audiences. Yet beneath the surface, she was consumed by anxiety that Robert might regain power, that her carefully constructed world might collapse. Her partnership with Daniel was her shield and her weapon, a means to secure her future while keeping Robert at bay. Daniel's approach was more insidious. He operated in the shadows, influencing key players, spreading doubts, and exploiting weaknesses. His meetings were laced with charm but underscored by menace. Daniel thrived on control, and his growing influence within the company was a direct threat to Robert's authority. Yet, his overconfidence sometimes betrayed him, blinding him to the quiet but relentless strategy unfolding under Robert's watchful eye. Despite the fractures, moments of genuine connection persisted. Melissa's occasional coffee breaks with Robert revealed glimpses of the man beneath the armor, a man haunted by memories yet driven by hope. Anna's rare moments of doubt showed a flicker of the woman she might have been without ambition's corrosive pull. Daniel's brief reflections hinted at a man shaped by past wounds, though his choices betrayed no mercy. The story of Robert, Anna, Melissa, and Daniel was one of contrasts: loyalty versus betrayal, ambition versus integrity, silence versus confrontation. It was a tale not just about lost homes and broken trusts but about the resilience of the human spirit and the lengths one would go to reclaim what was stolen. In this web of power and pain, Robert stood at the center, no longer the boy beneath the oak tree but a man forged by fire, ready to face whatever came next with quiet strength and unwavering resolve. Robert stood frozen in the doorway of the family's living room, the walls that once echoed with laughter now filled with cold, calculated voices. The weight of betrayal pressed down on him as the truth settled like ice in his chest. His childhood home, the sanctuary of his youth, had been sold to fund Anna's lavish art residency. The very foundation of his past, the memories nurtured under its roof, had been handed over without a word, without a chance for him to defend it. The realization hit harder than any physical blow, and yet, when he confronted his family, their justifications were as cold and unyielding as stone. His father's face was a mask of practiced indifference, the lines around his eyes deepening not with regret, but with calculation. "Robert," he began, voice steady but devoid of warmth, "the medical bills were piling up, and with Anna's tuition and residency costs, there was no other option. It was necessary for the family's future." The words landed like a verdict, final and unforgiving. His mother, poised and immaculate, nodded in agreement, her eyes betraying only the faintest flicker of guilt before she masked it with a rehearsed smile. "We thought you understood. It was a sacrifice we all had to make." Robert's voice was steady despite the storm raging inside him. "You sold our home without telling me? Without even asking?" The accusation hung in the air, unanswered. The room seemed to shrink, suffocating under the weight of unspoken truths and shattered trust. Anna's glamorous world stood in stark contrast to the raw pain Robert felt. Her life was a carousel of gallery openings, media features, and social events, all carefully choreographed to project success and charm. Yet beneath the sparkling surface lay a trail of lies and manipulation. She painted herself as the visionary artist, deserving of every opportunity, but at what cost? The sacrifices were not hers to make alone. She had traded Robert's legacy for fleeting fame, and her smile at the dinner table was a mask concealing a conscience as sharp and cold as broken glass. Meanwhile, Daniel moved silently but strategically, a shadow behind Anna's ascent. His charm was undeniable, but so was his ambition. As Anna's partner and confidant, he wielded influence with precision, subtly tightening his grip on Robert's inheritance and the company they once built together. His meetings with key stakeholders were laced with persuasive promises and veiled threats, chipping away at Robert's support and isolating him within the very walls he had once called home. Robert found himself at a crossroads, the painful choice clear yet agonizing. To fight openly would risk exposing vulnerabilities he could ill afford, to lose the respect of allies and the company he had nurtured. But to remain silent was to accept defeat, to watch as everything he held dear was dismantled piece by piece. The battle was no longer just for a house or a company, it was for his identity, his future, and the fragments of trust that still clung to his weary heart. As the days unfolded, Robert's resolve grew. He refused to be a victim of circumstance or the silent casualty of greed. Each calculated move, each quiet investment, was a step toward reclaiming what was stolen. His strategy was patient and precise, a silent storm gathering strength beneath a calm surface. He knew the fight ahead would be long and arduous, marked by deceit and power plays, but he was ready to face it with unwavering determination. Melissa remained his steadfast ally, her support a beacon in the dark. She navigated the shifting tides alongside him, balancing her own doubts with fierce loyalty. Her presence was a reminder that Robert was not alone, that the bonds forged in trust and shared struggle could withstand even the harshest betrayals. Anna and Daniel, meanwhile, continued their ascent, unaware that the quiet rebellion brewing beneath them was destined to unravel their carefully constructed world. Their confidence bordered on arrogance, blind to the fact that the foundations they stood upon were cracking. Robert's choice was made. He would fight, not with noise and fury, but with silence and strategy. His revenge would be the reclamation of his past and the forging of a future built on his terms. The stakes had never been higher, but neither had his resolve. Robert sat alone in his modest apartment late into the night, the city's distant hum barely penetrating the thick silence that enveloped him. The worn leather chair beneath him creaked softly as he leaned forward, hands clasped tightly, eyes fixed on nothing but the shadows cast on the peeling walls. Memories of simpler days swirled relentlessly in his mind, the laughter beneath the sprawling oak tree, the scent of fresh rain on the garden roses, the warmth of his family's home. Those moments now felt painfully distant, like fragments of a life that had been stolen. Anger gnawed at him, a bitter flame that flickered unpredictably beneath his calm facade. How had they all turned so cold? His parents, once protectors, had become strangers who sold his legacy with ease. Anna, the woman he once trusted with his dreams, paraded her success while wearing betrayal like a crown. Each public accolade she received, every glowing article about her art residency, pierced Robert deeper than any wound. The applause that celebrated her triumph was a stark contrast to the silence that accompanied his grief. Guilt wrapped itself tightly around his heart. Was there something he missed? A sign overlooked? Could he have fought harder, loved differently, saved the home and the people who had abandoned him? The questions echoed endlessly, unanswerable yet relentless. They haunted him during the quiet moments, when the weight of loss pressed hardest. Melissa's presence was a steady balm amid the turmoil. Her voice, firm yet compassionate, often cut through Robert's spiraling thoughts. "Robert, I know it's hard, but dwelling on what's lost won't build what's next," she would say, her eyes reflecting both concern and unwavering belief. She urged him to focus on rebuilding, on the future rather than the past. Her words were anchors, reminding him that strength came not just from vengeance but from resilience. Yet, Robert's resolve only hardened with time. The pain fueled a silent determination, a quiet storm gathering momentum beneath the surface. He refused to be defined by loss or betrayal. Every late night spent researching stocks, every calculated investment made with meticulous care, was a brick in the fortress he was constructing. His strategy was methodical, born from heartbreak but guided by clarity. Anna's world glittered on social media, photos of gallery openings, interviews praising her talent, endorsements from influential figures. The curated perfection she displayed was infuriating and heartbreaking in equal measure. Robert watched from the shadows, his private pain hidden behind a mask of composure. The contrast between their realities deepened his resolve, her victories were built on the ruins of his past. Melissa remained by his side through it all, offering more than just professional support. In moments of rare vulnerability, Robert shared fragments of his fear and sorrow, knowing she would hold them without judgment. Their bond was forged in shared purpose and tempered by trust. She understood the complexity of his emotions, the rage, the sadness, the flickers of hope, and helped him channel them into focused action. Despite the pain, Robert found solace in small rituals. Early mornings with a steaming cup of coffee, the crispness of dawn offering a fresh start. Quiet walks through the city's awakening streets, the cool air clearing his mind. These moments grounded him, reminding him that life persisted beyond the shadows cast by betrayal. The emotional struggle was not linear. Some days, grief threatened to overwhelm, and anger flared uncontrollably. Other days, a quiet calm settled, a fragile peace amid the storm. Robert learned to navigate these waves, understanding that healing and rage could coexist. His silence was not weakness but a strategic pause, a gathering of strength for battles yet to come. The stakes were more than financial or legal. This was a fight for identity, for reclaiming dignity stolen by those he once called family. The betrayal cut deep, but it also revealed the depth of his own resilience. Robert's journey was marked by pain, yes, but also by an unyielding will to rise above. As Anna's star rose higher, Robert's shadow grew longer, unseen but steadily closing in. The silent war had begun, fueled by heartbreak but guided by clarity. Every step forward was a step toward justice, not loud or vengeful, but quiet, inevitable, and absolute. Robert's investigation into the tangled web of betrayal led him to a discovery that shifted the entire battle in his favor. Hidden deep within a stack of forgotten family documents, he uncovered a letter, aged, embossed with the family crest, and written in his grandmother's elegant hand. It detailed the existence of a trust fund she had established decades ago, a secret inheritance designed not just to preserve wealth, but to test the character of its rightful heir. The terms were clear yet challenging. Only one who demonstrated profound resilience and independence in the face of adversity could unlock its treasures. This revelation was more than a financial boon, it was a validation of Robert's silent struggle and the pain he had endured. His grandmother, a woman often dismissed as eccentric and reclusive, had seen through the family's fractures and devised a safeguard against greed and entitlement. The trust was vast, encompassing real estate, art collections, and controlling shares in multiple companies, assets that could tip the scales decisively. But accessing it required patience, strategy, and proof of unwavering strength. Armed with this secret, Robert devised a plan that blended anonymity with precision. He established a shell corporation under a pseudonym, carefully registering it in Delaware to ensure privacy. Through this vehicle, he began acquiring commercial debts tied to the very assets his family and Anna had coveted. The largest of these was the childhood home, now in the hands of the Abernathys, an elderly couple who owned a local manufacturing plant teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. Robert's acquisitions were swift and discreet, each transaction a calculated move in a silent chess game. As he purchased debt and influenced key decisions through proxies, the fragile empire Anna and Daniel had built began to tremble. Rumors of financial instability started to surface within boardrooms and social circles, whispering doubts about the solidity of their holdings. The mounting pressure was invisible to the public eye but undeniable to those who watched closely. Daniel, once confident in his unchecked ascent, sensed the shifting winds. His attempts to reinforce alliances and secure new investments met unexpected resistance. Meetings grew tense, and trust among partners wavered. Anna's polished image began to crack under the weight of unspoken fears. The carefully curated narrative of success faltered as subtle inquiries and investigative journalists started probing deeper. For Robert, this was a turning point. His quiet moves spoke louder than any confrontation, each strategic acquisition a step toward reclaiming not just a house, but the dignity and legacy stripped from him. The power he wielded was unseen yet unstoppable, a force that disrupted their world from within. The battle lines were drawn not in boardrooms filled with shouting, but in silent transfers and unseen contracts. The stakes escalated as Robert secured controlling shares in Northgate Holdings, the regional distribution firm where his father still held a senior position. This move struck a nerve, undermining his father's standing and unraveling the social status that had long shielded the family. The repercussions rippled through every layer of their lives, from corporate offices to social galas. The veneer of invincibility shattered. Anna's public engagements became increasingly fraught with tension. The glow of success was dimmed by rumors of scandal and financial strain. Daniel's confident smirk faded in private meetings, replaced by a guarded caution. The empire they had constructed on the foundation of betrayal was showing signs of collapse. Yet Robert remained composed, his emotions guarded beneath a calm exterior. He knew that patience was crucial, that any premature move could jeopardize everything. His resolve was anchored in the knowledge that true power often lay in silence and strategy. Every discreet purchase, every calculated partnership, was part of a larger design to reclaim what was rightfully his. Melissa's role became more vital than ever. She managed communications and operations with quiet efficiency, shielding Robert from distractions and ensuring that their plans advanced smoothly. Her unwavering loyalty and sharp intellect complemented his vision, forming an unbreakable alliance against the storm of deceit surrounding them. The second twist was not just a plot development, it was the moment when the tide turned. Robert's discovery of the trust fund, coupled with his calculated use of it, transformed the narrative from one of victimhood to one of empowerment. The silent war he waged was gaining momentum, threatening to dismantle the illusion of control Anna and Daniel had enjoyed. As whispers of his acquisition spread through the industry, Robert prepared for the next phase. The quiet foundation he had built was sturdy and expansive, ready to support the inevitable reckoning. The empire that once seemed untouchable was vulnerable, and Robert's patient vigilance ensured that it would not stand for long. In the shadows of power and betrayal, Robert stood resolute. His silent moves were the sharpest weapons, his calm the fiercest armor. The game had changed, and the outcome was no longer in doubt. Robert moved carefully, knowing that timing was everything. The night of Anna's much-anticipated art exhibition had arrived, a lavish affair held at one of the city's most prestigious galleries. The invitations alone had caused a stir, promising an evening of glamour, acclaim, and the unveiling of her newest works. The event was meant to cement Anna's status as a rising star in the art world, a public declaration of success that would drown out any whispers of doubt. Behind the scenes, however, Robert was orchestrating something far more potent. Months of quiet maneuvering had led to this moment, a reckoning carefully crafted to dismantle Anna's carefully constructed world in the most public of ways. The scathing anonymous review, penned by a ruthless art critic known for exposing emotional fakery, was scheduled to be released live during the event. Simultaneously, a discreet live video feed would broadcast Robert's triumphant return to his reclaimed childhood home, an image of quiet victory that would ripple through the crowd. The gallery buzzed with anticipation as guests arrived, their murmurs mingling with the clinking of glasses and the soft strains of a string quartet. Anna moved through the crowd like a queen, radiant and confident, her smile masking any unease. Daniel flanked her, his gaze sharp and calculating, ready to seize every opportunity to reinforce their grip on power. The exhibition halls were filled with her art, bold, expressive pieces that told a story of struggle and resilience, a narrative she had crafted carefully to gain sympathy and acclaim. As the evening progressed, the atmosphere shifted subtly. Screens scattered throughout the gallery flickered, the anonymous review appearing on them just as the critic's harsh words echoed through the room. The critic dismantled Anna's work with surgical precision, calling it a hollow cry for attention, emotionally manufactured, and a vapid attempt to commodify personal tragedy. The audience's polite smiles faded, replaced by whispered doubts and shared glances. Phones came out, tweets were composed, and the energy began to curdle. Then the live feed ignited the final spark. On the largest screen, clear and unflinching, the camera panned across the freshly painted rooms of Robert's childhood home. Viewers saw movers carrying a plush sofa through the front door, Robert himself directing their placement with a small, confident smile. His wave at the camera was casual, yet it carried the weight of a silent declaration. This was his life reclaimed, his past restored. Anna's radiant facade cracked visibly. Her eyes darted toward the screens, her breath catching as the crowd's attention shifted from her art to the undeniable proof of Robert's quiet victory. Murmurs turned to open conversations, and conversations to questioning looks. The carefully woven narrative she had spun unraveled in real time. Daniel's usual smirk was gone, replaced by a tense glare as he assessed the damage. His whispered conversations with gallery staff grew urgent and desperate, but the momentum was beyond his control. The power they had wielded so effortlessly was slipping through their fingers, exposed by Robert's strategic silence. As the crowd thinned, Anna and Daniel were left standing amidst empty spaces and cold stares. The humiliation was palpable, their empire reduced to dust in the wake of Robert's unyielding resolve. The victory was not loud or boastful but carried a weight far heavier, an undeniable shift in power. Robert watched from afar, his heart steady despite the storm he had unleashed. This was the culmination of months of silent war, a testament to the strength born from betrayal and the clarity forged in pain. The battle was over, and Robert stood firmly in control, not just of the company and the home, but of his own destiny. Melissa reached his side, her eyes reflecting pride and relief. Together, they observed the final unraveling of a world built on lies, ready to build something new from the ashes. The scars of the past remained, but they were no longer chains, they were marks of survival. In that moment, Robert understood that true power lay not in dominance shouted from rooftops, but in quiet persistence, strategic patience, and unshakable integrity. The reckoning had come, and justice had been served in the silence between words. Robert stood at the threshold of the home that had once been his sanctuary, the place where his earliest memories had taken root beneath the sprawling oak tree. The air was thick with the scent of fresh paint and newly cut grass, a tangible testament to the transformation that had taken months of sweat, strategy, and quiet determination. Each room told a story of revival, walls repaired, windows gleaming with sunlight, spaces filled with books, plants, and the soft hum of life reclaimed. The house was no longer a shrine to a past betrayed, it was a living, breathing testament to resilience and new beginnings. With every step he took through the restored halls, Robert felt the heavy weight of loss lift incrementally, replaced by a profound sense of purpose. The home was more than bricks and mortar, it was the embodiment of his identity, the foundation on which he would build the next chapter of his life. This victory was not marked by loud celebrations or ostentatious displays but by the quiet contentment that comes from reclaiming what was stolen and making it whole again. Recognizing that his journey had been shaped by not just personal pain but by the silent suffering of countless others, Robert took a decisive step beyond the walls of his reclaimed home. He established the Phoenix Fund, a foundation dedicated to supporting families betrayed by those they once trusted. Operating with anonymity and discretion, the fund provided resources and guidance to those navigating the treacherous waters of familial betrayal and loss. It became a beacon of hope, a quiet force for good born from the ashes of Robert's own trials. Melissa's role evolved alongside Robert's vision. From her position as operations manager, she rose to become a trusted partner and co-leader of the foundation. Her sharp intellect, unwavering loyalty, and compassionate heart made her an indispensable ally. Together, they navigated the complex landscape of philanthropy and corporate responsibility, ensuring that the fund's impact was both meaningful and lasting. Melissa's presence was a constant reminder that Robert was not alone. Their shared commitment forged a bond stronger than any betrayal they had endured. Meanwhile, Anna and Daniel's names faded from headlines and social circles. The empire they had built on deception crumbled, their influence extinguished by the quiet strength of Robert's resolve. Anna retreated into obscurity, her once bright star dimmed by scandal and public disfavor. Daniel vanished from the corridors of power, his ambitions thwarted and his reputation tarnished. Their fall was swift but irrevocable, a stark contrast to Robert's steady ascent. For Robert, peace was found not in vengeance but in reclamation. The silent war he had waged was not about destruction but restoration, of home, of trust, and of self. He learned that true victory lay in building a future untainted by the shadows of betrayal, one that honored the past without being imprisoned by it. Days turned to months as Robert poured his energy into nurturing the foundation and cultivating the renewed home. The garden bloomed under his care, roses of deep red flourishing as symbols of both pain and perseverance. The community around him grew, drawn by the authenticity and hope embodied in his actions. Letters of gratitude arrived from families helped by the Phoenix Fund, stories of healing and courage that echoed his own journey. In quiet moments on the porch, wrapped in a soft cashmere blanket, Robert reflected on the path that had brought him here. The sky above bled into shades of orange, pink, and purple, a daily spectacle that mirrored the complexity of his emotions. He no longer awaited visions or plans for revenge, instead, he embraced the present with a calm heart and steady breath. The home, the foundation, and the life he was rebuilding were his true triumphs. Robert's story became one not of betrayal's finality but of resilience's enduring power. It was a testament to the strength found in silence, the courage born from heartbreak, and the peace achieved through reclaiming what was rightfully his. In the quiet sanctuary of his restored home, surrounded by the fruits of his labor and the support of those who believed in him, Robert finally felt whole again. Robert settled into the worn wooden swing on the porch of his reclaimed home, the fading light of twilight casting long shadows across the lawn. The air was cool but comforting, carrying the faint scent of blooming roses that he had planted with his own hands months ago. Each petal seemed to whisper stories of survival and resilience, gentle reminders of the battles fought in silence and the strength drawn from pain. As he lifted the delicate porcelain cup to his lips, the warmth of the tea seeped into his fingers, grounding him in the present moment. The house behind him stood serene, bathed in the soft glow of the evening sun filtering through freshly cleaned windows. It no longer bore the weight of betrayal or sorrow, instead, it breathed life and hope into the quiet neighborhood. The walls held memories, but these were no longer chains binding Robert to the past, they were chapters closed with dignity and grace. The familiar creak of the swing's chains and the distant chirping of crickets created a symphony of peace that had once seemed unattainable. Robert's mind drifted through the journey that had led him here, the loss of his childhood home, the sting of family's cold betrayals, Anna's dazzling yet hollow world, and the slow, deliberate path he had carved to reclaim his life. It was a path paved with quiet strength, strategic patience, and an unwavering belief in justice beyond vengeance. The silent victory he now embraced was not marked by spectacle but by the profound peace that settled deep within his soul. Around him, the garden flourished, a testament to new beginnings. The roses, vibrant and resilient, had thrived despite the harshness of winter and the neglect of seasons past. They stood as symbols of transformation, mirroring Robert's own evolution from a broken boy into a man forged by trials yet unbroken in spirit. Each bloom was a silent victory, a reminder that beauty could emerge from even the most wounded soil. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky with hues of amber and lavender, a canvas of endings and promises. Robert allowed himself a rare, genuine smile. The ghosts of the past, the betrayals, the heartbreak, the silent wars, had lost their grip. They were stories told and concluded, no longer weapons wielded against him. Instead, they were lessons etched into the fabric of his being, shaping a future built on resilience and hope. Melissa's voice interrupted his reverie, gentle and warm as she stepped onto the porch. She carried a small stack of letters, messages from families touched by the foundation Robert had established, the Phoenix Fund. Their words spoke of healing, support, and renewed strength, echoing the very journey Robert had undertaken. Her presence was a reminder that his fight had extended beyond personal redemption, it had sparked hope in others who, like him, had been betrayed yet refused to be defeated. Robert handed Melissa the cup, watching as she sipped thoughtfully before settling beside him on the swing. Together, they sat in companionable silence, the world around them softened by twilight's embrace. The quiet was no longer oppressive but filled with promise, a space where healing could continue and new stories could begin. As the first stars pierced the evening sky, Robert reflected on the nature of victory. It was not the loud triumph of retribution but the quiet reclamation of self and place. It was found in moments like this, sipping tea on a porch surrounded by roses, free from the shadows that once threatened to consume him. The silent victory was his, earned through endurance, wisdom, and an unbreakable will to reclaim what was rightfully his. Finally, he was home.